Have you ever looked at yourself in a mirror and decided to disappear on purpose? The bathroom light buzzes above a cracked oval glass. My reflection is a smear of bad decisions and cheap makeup. I press my hand to the streaked glass until the skin on my palm fogs it with breath. Elena Rossi, the daughter who balances ledgers and sells paintings on the sly, becomes something else in that fog. A clumsy woman in a mustard sweater, hair pinned back with the kind of pins stolen from a bargain bin, glasses taped at the bridge. Every stitch of it is deliberate. Every uglifying mark is a lie I perform so convincingly I almost believe it myself. My father thought he was buying an alliance. Giovanni Rossi folded me like a ledger, assets and liabilities, signatures where emotion should be. He called it survival. He called Dante Moretti a stabilizing force. He forgot to ask me if I wanted to be sold. He assumed agreement because I had once learned not to make trouble. That was the plan. Trade me for debt forgiven, for the kind of protection you only hear about in late-night warnings. I could have said no. I could have run. I chose another kind of rebellion. I make myself ugly the way a soldier muds up her face before stepping into plain sight. Greasy foundation that catches light like a bad repair. A cheap smudged rouge that migrates into the small creases of my smile. A lipstick that bleeds into my teeth. I smear mascara until the lashes clump like broken fences. I braid my hair badly, knotting a ribbon that used to be my mother's scarf around a cheap elastic until it pulls my face taut unnaturally. The sweater is a deliberate surrender. Mustard, scratchy, full of pills. It smells faintly of cigarette smoke from the thrift pile it came from, but that's part of the point. Suffocating fabric that annuls the silhouette of any femininity. If beauty is currency, I pour mine into the drain. I can feel him already, more as an idea than a man. Dante Moretti, the rumor in my father's trembling voice. They say he moves like water over stone, that he buys silence the way others buy art. They say he can order a room to hush. The photograph my father showed me was a dark smudge of expensive suits and a jaw you could set locks to. I am supposed to be frightened. Instead, I'm making arrangements for my escape hatch. Be so repellent he will refuse me. 1 hour, one act of social sabotage. He will walk away, my father will look foolish, and I will be free of contract and of handshakes that felt like shackles. I leave a note in the sink for the cleaner. Do not think I forgot to appear ridiculous on purpose, and head out into the evening. The city smells of rain and overcooked coffee. My reflection on the taxi window is an ugly smudge passing neon signs. People look at me like I've been dropped from another decade. It's a liberating sort of anonymity. The restaurant is called Loro. It's the kind of place designed so people notice they are rich. Pale marble, an intimate amber light that flatters the wealthy, servers who move in practiced bows. My shoes sink into the red carpet like pen presses into soft paper. I can feel eyes along the corridor, waiting to score my failure. The maitre d' pauses, expression polite, and then the brief calculation of whether he is dealing with patron or problem. He leans in, lips barely moving. Signora Rossi, if you want. His voice is an even instrument tuned to deference. I smile with the broken confidence of a woman performing an attitude she will not inhabit. I'll wait, I say, and let him believe the story I'm selling. A woman late and embarrassed and apologetic. In another life, I would have spent this waiting composing an apology in my head. In this life, I spent it polishing my will. 1 hour, be unbearable, slip back into the shadow when the deed is done. If you love stories where the unexpected flips the script, stay with me. Then he arrives. They call his entourage Quiet Thunder. The room falls into a different rhythm the moment Dante Moretti steps over the threshold. The ambient noise narrows, breath shortens. His coat is the kind that doesn't so much hang as declare its intentions. He smells like sandalwood and cold iron. He moves like someone who has practiced the art of taking up space without asking for permission. People part as if an invisible current pushes them aside. I expect the little stabs, and eyebrow lifted, a dismissive glance. I expect the satisfaction of being seen and rejected. What I get instead is something else. A slow curiosity that runs down him like a measuring line. He sees me the way a connoisseur sees a flawed painting, not repulsed, but engaged. His black eyes, sharp and implacable, take in the taped glasses, the smudged makeup, the mustard sweater. He doesn't look away.
He doesn't look amused in the way the maitre d' or the waiting staff are. Instead, there is a mild interest that makes my heart do the small, traitorous thing of pinprick alarmness. When he approaches my table, he does not come with the swagger of an intruder. He moves like someone entering rooms long after they've been built to his specifications. He lifts his coat off his shoulders, and the air around him cools, as if a window has been opened. "Elena Rossi," he says, and I want to ask how he knows my name, but my mouth has decided for me. "You made yourself peculiar." "You hear things," I say. My voice shows the requisite embarrassment, the performance of ineptitude. The plan is still intact. Make him see me as misfit, as someone not worth the trouble. He laughs once, short and unamused, and sits as if claiming a chair has the same weight as claiming a territory. Around us, the staff seem to forget how to breathe. He doesn't address my father or the men who arranged the match. He looks at me, his gaze ironic but not cruel. "Is that what you wanted?" he asks. "To be invisible, for 1 hour, to be rejected."
He taps the table with a finger that seems to radiate command. "You could have run," he says. "You didn't." His observation is not a question. It lands like a verdict. My hands curl around the napkin, feeling the roughness of its edge. He studies me as if he is cataloging a curious specimen, and the sensation is oddly intimate. "Do you think ugliness absolves you?" he asks. "That looking like a mistake will make them look away?" "I thought it might," I admit. The words are quieter than the plan required. Maybe it is courage, or the relief of confessing. Maybe it's the realization that one lie is not enough to free a person who has been priced at the ledger of his father's shame. It was the only tool I had. He stares for a beat that stretches like taffy. Then, without a flourish, he signals the maitre d' to raise the thermostat. The waitress hovers as if she can read this man's temper. She adjusts the AC without questioning. Protectively, he positions himself between me and the rest of the room. It's a small thing, a blanketing gesture, but there is no performance to it. It does not look like pity. "You are not a thing to be hidden," he says, in a tone that could be comfort or threat. It is both. He orders a bottle of the house wine, then something from the kitchen that the menu names with insolent extravagance. He watches me eat with an interest that borders on amusement when I pick at calamari, and then, on impulse, stab a fork into a messy mound of squid ink pasta. I devour it like a woman hungry for proof. I smear the black ink on my chin on purpose, flourishing the disaster. Guests glance up, some shaking their heads with the satisfaction of being right about other people's shame. I hear my father's throat clear, the embarrassment woven through the sounds. I expect the first slap of dismissal. Instead, Dante reaches across the table without asking and closes the corner of my mouth with his fingers, wiping the ink with a napkin as if he is performing an operation he has done 100 times. The contact is neutral, nothing tender, but not cruel either. The action reads like a man testing whether something is real. "You are performing," he says quietly, "but you are a better actor than you realize." "Then stop me," I challenge in a voice edged with drunk defiance. "Do it now and free me." He smiles, and it is a dangerous thing, like the glint on a knife you hoped would not be unsheathed. "Why would I do such a thing?" he asks. "If you are a performance, then you are interesting. If you are not, I would be bored." There is a slow internal shift. The plan, my plan, was to make him repelled. Instead, the repulsion has become a magnet. I am supposed to be the commodity, but his gaze treats me like a prospect, as if there are layers he can peel back for the amusement of discovery. He speaks to my father then, not as a man keeping distance, but as someone who has already decided to cross that line.
"Giovanni," he says, voice even, "this arrangement stands. But know this, my interest isn't in a purchased object. If she behaves like a thing, I will treat her as I would a thing. If she proves herself otherwise, we renegotiate." The room exhales in a way that has nothing to do with temperature. My father's relief is palpable, like heat rising off a wet street. Relief is not freedom. It is a bandage. My father's eyes are wet with the kind of gratitude that forgets to be thorough. There is a powerful man who makes deals. There is also the trace of a man who likes being challenged. He has told my father something that reads like mercy, but feels like a wager. He has claimed me for reasons that cannot be simplified to protection alone. There is an edge to the claim that hums like the fine wire of a trap. After dinner, he offers me his hand, as if we are two conspirators agreeing to something neither one of us will speak of in full. "Come," he says. "There is a place nearby where the light tells truths better than this restaurant." I could refuse.
I could slip out into the rain and watch the city swallow me whole. I do not. I stand up slow, letting everyone see the mustard sweater and the taped glasses, letting them judge their harvest. The act of stepping into the world on purpose has been more galvanizing than any secret whisper of its end. He does not let the valet drive me home. He has a car waiting. His driver opens the back door with mechanical courtesy. I slide in, the upholstery a soft animal dark against my legs. Sandalwood closes in like a tide. He sits beside me, not touching, but the proximity is an accusation. On the drive, he speaks in small sentences, asking things that look like questions but feel like reconnoitering probes. He asks about my work, about the paintings in our apartment, about provenance and restorations. He listens to my answers as if testing the truth of each word. I talk too much, because talking is armor that doesn't have to be attractive. You know about art, he says. You mention fabric content and pigment in the same breath. Your father calls it useless. I call it interesting. I swallow. Art is survival of a different kind. That, and I have spent a long time learning how to read value where people refuse to look. He studies me as if trying to read the ledger where I have hidden myself. You are dangerous, he says, after a while, but dangerous in a way I can use. That's one way of promising me something, I say, and I'm not sure whether I'm joking. Use me then. Use me enough and I'll become indispensable. He reaches across and taps the bridge of my nose with a fingertip as if chastising a child. Do not make the mistake of asking to be used, he says. People with your faculties are not possessions. They are investments. They are liabilities, sometimes delightful ones. We drive through streets that get quieter the more we approach his territory.
The city here shines in private lights, like a secret lamp someone forgot to bother covering. He drops me at a boutique that smells like polished wood and incense, expensive things in perfect order. The shopkeeper receives him with the rigid affection of someone who understands their place in a larger machine. Men like Dante have a way of moving through commerce like predators through a pen where the animals know how to behave. He gestures toward the back room. Bring something that will fight the sweater, he says. There is a private amusement in his voice, a small theatricality that suggests he is enjoying the incongruity of a red silk dress being presented to a woman who hours earlier created herself into the exception. The clothes arrive in a black box. He hands it to me the way a man offers a secret. The box has no logo, only a weight that suggests intention. The blackness is almost theatrical in its refusal to give away promise. I hesitate, because this is the exact moment when a woman who has been sold is supposed to be transformed in a way that cancels her earlier protest. It is the exact moment when actors on a stage allow the audience to believe in their redemption. I lift the lid. Red. The silk is a statement, glossy, impossible, and warm against my skin like a dare. It catches the dim light of the boutique and throws it back sharpened. For a second, I feel like an odd contraption, an ancient coin in a modern palm. The fabric brushes my wrist and promises a cleavage of sorts, a true reveal. Not the accidental smudge of makeup, but an intentional unmasking. He watches my face while I slide the garment over my head in the boutique's curtained room. I stand before a full-length mirror, and for the first time I see the contrast between the woman I constructed and the one who might be chosen. My hair hangs in a sloppy knot. The sweater still clings to my arms like a debtor's chain under a pile of garments. I step out in the dress, and for a horrible second, I can see the room counting me. The dress fits like a story tailored just to me. No excess ornamentation, just the curve of silk that proves I have edges and intention. Now you look dangerous, he says, and the compliment lands oddly, like a prediction. It's only fabric, I say, but my eyes betray me. I feel every inch of the dress as if it were a newly acquired vocabulary. It isn't about beauty. It's about the language beauty can speak when wielded like an axe. He hands me a small black card, his personal card, embossed and cold. You will come to the headquarters tomorrow, he says, for a dinner of a different kind. He makes it sound like a favor. He is offering me access that will come with strings, surety, and heavy expectations. He has shaped an opening. I can walk through it on my own terms, or I can let it be a passage I must traverse because my father sold me.
I change back into my ugly armor before stepping back into the night, like a salamander ducking into its camouflage. The dress folds into the black box and feels small and dangerous in my bag. I should be ashamed about having felt something like vindication, but shame tastes like salt,
and isn't strong enough to cover the new kind of hunger stirring behind my ribs. On the drive back home, he does something that calls our earlier claim into a different tune. He doesn't make another pronouncement in the car. He merely looks at me, and the look is a kind of measuring. Elena, he says. He says my name like both the softest and sharpest instrument in his collection. Do not mistake my indulgence for charity. I don't, I reply. I misbehave on purpose. You know that already. I would have paid to meet you the way you tried to hide, he says. It would be a profitable piece of art. Profitable. The word rings with all the meaning of a city that names value in transactions. He says it with the twinned respect and measurement of a man who knows a piece being worth more than its face. He tastes the world that way, scaling risk to reward. Before he leaves me at home, he does something that I didn't expect. He lifts my chin with 2 fingers, just enough for me to meet his eyes. It is not a kiss. It is a staking. Tomorrow, he says, make sure you are not wearing that sweater. He is both command and invitation. I watch him go, the black car swallowing him like a closing lid. The city draws its breath and holds it. I sleep badly, as people who have been handed a new map do. Dreams are thin and electric, like the memory of sandalwood in a dark room. I wake early with the black box under my bed and the taste of squidding between my teeth. I make coffee, even though my hands shake, and in the kettle's hiss, the question rises. What does a woman do when a monster offers her the choice to be claimed as property or to be invited as an ally? The boutique dress waits like an unanswered letter. I put on jeans and a sensible coat, because there are rules about what you show the city before you are prepared to negotiate with it. I call my father. His voice is at once apologetic and relieved. I did what I had to, he says, for the family. For the family. I am a sentence added to a paragraph he wrote years ago and never edited. You did, I say, and the words sit like a ledger's closing line. Now make sure you do not make any other deals without telling me. There is a pause. The sound of a man who has been given a chastening the size of a business contract. Mia, he says. He calls me that sometimes, the nickname slipping out like a private currency. I stop him. No more. Later that morning, the boutique calls with a polite voicemail asking if I would like alterations. In the message, there's a warmth that smells faintly of power. I let it go to the digital bin, because my decisions are not to be outsourced. When I arrive at Moretti's headquarters, the next evening, it is on my own terms, and with the red dress in a safe box hidden under my arm. The building is the kind of blank architecture that has been designed to sit comfortably in the middle of a city and also to be impenetrable. Guards at the gate look up at me with an interest that reads like a memory of a story they were told long before they were born. Inside, the space is an assembly of glass and shadow. It is where deals are made, the way orchestras warm up before they play. He meets me in the foyer, as if a prearranged signal has been fired. He is alone, as if interested parties do not need the theater of entourage. He looks different here, less of a public predator, more of a man who can carry a room in the way of someone who knows how to hold a thing and not let it break. He tilts his head, and behind his peripheral vision, I sense the map of him unspooling. You brought the dress, he observes. It is my armor, I say. The words surprise me in their definitiveness. I am used to the pretense of ironies. I am less used to owning a sentence as if it is truth. He smiles. Again, that thin razor of humor. Armor is useful, he says. Better than a sweater. He takes my hand to lead me up the private staircase. It's an older building, disguised by modern tastes. The stair creaks in an honest way that tastes like history. He does not rush me. This is his form of respect or ownership. It is hard to tell them apart sometimes. In the private suite, he offers me a cocktail as if to test my flavors, not my resolve. I sip and find it is dry and clean, no sugar added. We talk about art, which is where I am most honest. I tell him about an obscure provenance scandal involving a private collection and how a single ledger line could alter an entire estate's valuation. He listens intently and then, without grandiosity, admits his appreciation for someone who can hold facts like a weapon tempered by context. Tomorrow, he says, there will be a meeting. Capos will arrive, and there will be conversation about the San Gennaro shipment. I want someone who sees subtleties to be present. You want me there? My tone is sharp, half incredulous. This is how he claims me again, by offering me an arena where my mind is not only tolerated but required. The proposition sits between us like a board game with pieces that might move any second. Yes, he says. If you wish to refuse, I'll make sure you have the appropriate funds and independence to disappear. If you accept, there will be expectations. Either way, I will not have you be the plaything of men who cannot count. Acceptance in his mouth is not mercy.
It is a contract in which stakes are defined and risk shared. There is a part of me that recognizes the truth in his hunger. My usefulness is not merely to be beautiful, but to be incisive. I can choose the solitude of anonymity or the danger and power of proximity.
Before I leave, he offers the black box again, this time with a small silk scarf folded in the top. He says nothing, but his eyes ask a question that he does not speak aloud. Will you accept to be remade into someone who fights with me instead of running from the fight? I take the scarf, feeling its silk like a jewel. It is a thing that will not solve the ledger of my life, but it will become a symbol of the decision I may yet make. I tuck it inside my coat and step back out into the night where the city is unchanged, but I am not. The dress rests dormant in the box under my bed, red and patient. There is a thrill in the knowledge that I have traded the illusion of freedom for the real possibility of agency. It is not the same thing as safety. He has claimed me, yes, in the way a man owns a thing, but he has also opened a door where my knowledge has value and my choices carry weight. Claiming can be a prison. It can also be a hand extended into a pit of coins where you decide which coins to take. I walk home and let the city sound around me like a chorus, aware that somewhere in the orchestra we heard a chord shift. The tug of being visible and the tug of anonymity battle under my skin. Tonight, both have their place. When I step into our apartment, the mustard sweater hangs where I left it, small and alive with the smell it had always held, thrifted smoke and old soap. I fold it slowly, feeling the fabric between my fingers like a relic of a life I have not yet decided whether to burn. The red dress sits in its box like a comet waiting to be unboxed. The phone buzzes, a short message from an unknown number, a single sentence typed with the economy of someone who has never wasted words. Do not be late. The office will be ready. It is the kind of brief that reads like a summons and a courtesy at once. I fold the sweater into the drawer, and for the first time in a long while, I do not plan an escape route. I plan how to enter the room with armor chosen rather than imposed. I rest for an hour, lying on the couch with the city muffled beneath me, the red box close enough that I can feel its promise like a small drumbeat. I think of my father, of the ledger he forgot to balance properly. I think of the squid ink on my chin and the way Dante wiped it as if to test whether the stain would disappear under the same kind of touch. The thought is small and devastating. I had wanted to be invisible to be free, and instead I have become seen. There is danger here. There is also a rare kind of invitation. The night is a blade, and he has offered me a hand to learn to hold it. When morning comes, the headquarters is not an empty room. Capos cluster like potted plants, each cultivated, each sharp. Russo sits on the far side of the table with the kind of patience that reads as a wolf bearing a grudge. Alejandro Key, who goes by Conti among his closer men, has the arrogance of a man ready to elbow his way up. The faces around the table are a map of territorial claims and thinly veiled contempt. I am led to a seat not by ceremony, but by purpose. They want to see the merchandise, as some of them mutter under their breaths. Giovanni sits somehow smaller than the first time, as if the man who negotiated deals with his hands has been reduced to the size of a problem. Dante takes his place at the head of the table with the authority of someone who has been courted by respect. There is no flourish. He simply places his hands on the table as if arranging pieces on a board. Meet Elena Rossi, he says, and he does something else that I have not expected at all. He introduces me as a potential asset, not as a bride. He nods to me with a brief, sharp courtesy. She has insight into provenance and the San Gimero line. She will advise. The room makes a sound that is half laughter, half disbelief. Men like Russo harumph and Conti smirks, as if the presence of a woman at the table is a joke the universe has put into bad humor. My face is a shield with the memory of the mustard sweater pressed beneath it like a ghost. I speak then, and I am careful with my words, because in that room a syllable could be a weapon. I lay out a thesis about how the San Gennaro artifacts were catalogued, pointing out a ledger notation that, if corrected, rewrites the shipment's declared worth. The men listen, some with the boredom of those who have seen markets shift, and others with the small, hungry interest of predators smelling territory that might be divided. Dante watches me as if each point is a chess move. When I finish, the room is silent with the possibility of profit. It is the same hush that fell in the restaurant, but amplified. This time there is no subtlety to hide it as politeness. The men adjust their postures as if someone has rewritten the terms of exchange. Russo's voice is a dry leaf. And your knowledge is from where, exactly? Academia? A hobby? Art history, I say. Museum experience. I worked on cataloging private collections. I know paperwork as well as paintings. Silence.
Then a ripple like the first wave on a glass. The transaction that had been set for me without my consent suddenly requires revaluation. My numbers become leverage. My refusal to be pretty has yielded a currency I had hidden all along. Dante leans back, folding his hands. "This is why I insisted she attend," he says, his voice the same razored calm it always is. "She sees what others legally can't or won't." Conti smirks. "She isn't of our trade," he says. "What good is art in our business?" "Art is provenance," I answer, "and provenance is paper. Paper writes the shape of what we call value." The room shifts. Men who dealt in muscle and bullets realize that sales are often won on the backs of ink. The conversation moves like water finding a new channel. There is a hush of concession that smells faintly of the inevitable.
When the meeting adjourns, Dante walks me to the elevator, as if no one else exists in the world but the two of us and a swelling city beyond the glass. He regards me with something like new curiosity. "You did well," he says. "It was a lecture," I reply. "You taught them to listen." He smiles in a way that acknowledges both the compliment and the truth of it. "You taught them," he says, "and as of tonight, they will know better." On the elevator ride up, something subtle and dangerous happens. A small, unmarked box drops onto the floor with a muted, engineered thud. The guards freeze. Dante's expression changes in the specific way it does when he smells a problem. Attention narrows, muscles find readiness like a well-oiled mechanism. He steps in front of me, an instant of service that feels like courtesy and claim braided together. The box is a warning. It is a message that some part of his world does not want me at his table. It is also a signal that the stakes have risen beyond ledger lines in dinner theater. He looks at me with eyes that are both protective and appraising. "Stay behind me," he says softly, and for the first time, the world simplifies into immediate instructions. I do not move. I am not afraid because fear is already a familiar companion, but my body lends itself to the stance he directs. I stand, hands visible, as the guards open the box and find nothing. An empty envelope folded as a gesture. A joke, perhaps, or a probe, a test of my presence. He reads the envelope, eyes narrowing. "Cowardice," he says, a thin threat. "Or someone ensuring and counting the right enemies," I say. My voice is steady. There is no bravado, only the awareness that something necessary has been set in motion. He nods, and there is a compact between us, an agreement sealed in a private glance. We get off on the penthouse floor, where the windows drink the city's lights like a second sky. He offers me the red scarf he had given earlier and says, "Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, you watch. If anything moves against you, you tell me." "And if I move against them?" I ask, because cooperation is not enough for me now. I want participation. "Then you will have my hand," he answers simply. His words are a kind of currency, not ownership so much as partnership with terms. The balance between them is not equal, but it is possibly negotiable. I stand in the wake of that promise and realize that my life has not become easier. It has become more intricate. Layers of danger and possibility stack like papers waiting to be filed. I am no longer merely someone's daughter to be traded. I am a woman who made herself unpresentable to avoid being purchased, and who now stands at the threshold of being seen because someone with teeth chose to look closer. I go to bed with the red dress folded in a drawer like a sleeping predatory bird. The sweater waits in the closet like a relic I have yet to bury. The city outside my window hums. The world rearranges itself. Men have recalculated their ledgers. Somewhere, someone has decided that my presence is a variable that must be accounted for. The soft sound of my phone pings again with a simple message from Dante. "Come prepared. They test loyalty today." I close my eyes and count the ways a woman can be bought. With promises, with protection, with fear. I count instead the ways a woman can choose. The list is shorter, but it is mine. I do not yet know what it will cost to accept his hand. I only know I will no longer pretend not to see the cards dealt across the table. The envelope in the box had been thin, cowardly. It could have been meant to scare, to test, to whisper a promise of worse things. It had been all of those, a gamble cast like a pebble into still water. The ripples reached farther than the sender knew. They moved through guard rotation charts and through the way Russo's jaw clenched in council the next morning. They bent the conversation toward the fact that I had been here, that I had spoken, that I was, in some ledger, now a variable rather than a line item. The next hours are a tangle of small, precise motions, men scraping throats, aides clearing schedules,
Someone telling me to wait in Dante's private study while the Copos finished necessary business. Waiting is a different kind of work. I had practiced it for years. This one was thinner, tauter, like the stretch of skin before a bell snaps. When Dante finally appears, he does so without drama. He leans against one bookshelf like an irreverent sculpture and regards me as if he's appraising a piece he might buy or perhaps steal. The city presses its shoulder to the windows below, indifferent. "We will find out who would prefer you not at that table," he says. There is a hand-to-hand economy in his speech. Words are currencies he spends sparingly. But I have another question first. I tilt my head, because politeness is a weapon I still practice, which is, "Do you want to hunt with me?" It is not a metaphor. It is not a rhetorical flourish. It is a literal proposition. And the answer that rises in me is the most dangerous of all. Yes. I have to be clear. My head understands the logic. A woman who was bought, who had tried to become unsaleable, joining the hunt of her own would-be disposers is a violent drama for the newspapers. But my body answers with a different grammar. The shock of being claimed has turned an old fear into a new promise. Besides, danger sharpened the mind better than any lecture ever had. He reflects on my yes as if it were a coin slowly turning in the light. "We will move tonight," he says. "The capos who were irritated by my presence will be given something harder than a lesson, proof that the house protects its own. Dress in something functional, not the dress," he adds, and there is humor there that tastes like salt. I change into jeans that fit like a second skin and a leather jacket that smells faintly of diesel. The red silk waits at home in its black box, patient and already part of another story. Tonight, it's not about showing anyone what I can become. It's about showing what I can do when I refuse to be sidelined. He gives me an earpiece, thin and black, and the guards fit it like a crownless diadem. "No theatrics," he says. "We need to be quick and clean. You watch, you listen, you move where I tell you." I am not a soldier. My education has been pigments and ledger lines and the trust of a curator tucking fragile things into acid-free paper. But the city teaches you skills if you pay attention. How to read the heartbeat of a room, how to notice which hand trembles when someone lies, how to recognize the sound of a lighter that wants to be hidden in a palm. Those are the tools I bring. The plan is simple at its core, a confrontation to flush the traitor and his backers into showing themselves. Dante moves like a man with a chessboard under his skin. He discounts noise and counts pieces. The first stage is the club, where Conti prefers to make his light plays, where he sells bravado like drink tokens, and the men who back him visit like migrating birds. The club breathes warm breath on the street, neon and lacquer. Inside, the air is sticky with perfume and the kind of laughter that has rehearsal marks. Conti sits on a raised platform, surrounded by men who look like they could fold a man like a page. He keeps his lighter close, a cheap silver knockoff with a familiar sharp click when he snaps it open. I have seen the movement before. In the private suite when a capo checks his watch, the flick of a lighter is an index to temperament. Tonight, it becomes a clue. Dante moves like he does everywhere, slow and absolute, and I follow at a distance. He doesn't sit. He allows the room to approach and wave its opulence past his face. Conti sees him, and, predictably, preens. He waves and tosses some cheap joke in Dante's direction like a dog thrown a bone. Dante's response is small, a slight curve of the mouth, and then he turns his attention elsewhere. That is what unnerves Conti. Your monster ignores the bait and does not bite. We watch the hours like surgeons at a table. At one point, Conti flicks his lighter. The metallic click is a punctuation. It is the kind of habit people have when they feel empty and need a rhythm. I note it, the same small sound I have cataloged in my head for days. It matches the nervous cadence I heard in the elevator, someone nervous enough to test the silence by dropping a box. Dante takes his time. He does not pounce. He allows Conti to think himself untouchable. Then, when a man at the far end of the room tries to make a loser's joke about women at the table, Dante's voice cuts through the music like a blade. He allows himself a smile that does not correct but declares, "Is that how you arrange value? By who can stand a wine joke?" Conti's laugh is too loud. He makes a move toward Dante, half bravado, half challenge, and the room tightens like a fist. I watch the way his wrist moves,
the lighter glints. He snaps it open again, automatically, and I follow that sound like a breadcrumb. It is small, but consistent, an unconscious signature. In the moment Dante chooses to act, he doesn't draw a weapon. He uses theater. He allows a fight to begin and then ends it like an editor with a coup of a line. Someone bumps into Conti. The lighter falls from his fingers. It hits marble and skitters to a shadow like a small, defeated animal. For a heartbeat, Conti stumbles, more with surprise than pain, but his posture is too rehearsed to seem genuine. Dante bends, picks up the lighter, and closes Conti's fingers around an identical one. "Keep it," he says, his voice low. The message is simple. We don't make a scene where we can avoid it, but we can replace your toys with ours. The men laugh because the fear is masked as air. Later, when the night is a different shape and the backers shift like fish to deeper water, the pattern becomes clear. Conti's lighter isn't unusual on its face, but the way he snaps it, an impatient brass click, matches the tempo of a man who likes to be in control. It matches the small trick I noticed in the envelope drop, a neat, practiced hand. These are small things to notice and large things to interpret. The guards cross-check shipping manifests, call past associates. We follow breadcrumbs, and the breadcrumbs lead to a warehouse on the pier. It rains on the drive to the docks, the kind of rain that makes city lights smear like ink. Dante's car is a black vessel moving through water. He says nothing to me the whole way. His silence is a cockpit where the instruments are brains and attention. When we arrive, the smell is salt and oil and the chilled breath of ships. The pier is a place of shadows that pretend to be permanent. We split into two teams. Mine moves with the practicality of people who have rehearsed 1,000 small routines and now must do one without instruction manuals. The plan, such as it is to flush the backers into the open and to stop them from escaping into the maze of shipping crates. There will be no long list of minutely described logistics here. This is improvisation with muscle and wit. On the rooftop of the warehouse, a black SUV idles with the engine too loud for the place. Men fan out like a bad constellation around it. Someone up on a light tower has the eye of a hawk, and in the distance a figure moves with the careful grace of a trained shooter. I see it as a shadow that has intent. I do not think of weapons, only of angles and reflections. I think in terms of light and a sound I can flip. A car's headlights, a mirror's glint. My mind fills with less romance than the city ever admits. If you can change the light, you can change the target. Dante gives a hand signal, and we move. The world compresses into narrow strips of sound. Rain, breath, the soft slap of boots. A metallic thud, another box, another bluff, drops somewhere like a whispered exclamation. The men scatter, and in the chaos, Conti tries to slip behind a crate. He has the arrogance of a man who thinks meretricious courage is a shield. He lights his lighter again, a ridiculous spark in a scary world. The click echoes, and my memory tilts. The same sound from the club, from the elevator, from a toast in a room where men celebrate careers made of other people's fear. I close in because the world has become a puzzle, and the puzzle is counting me among its players. I don't touch him with a knife or a gun. I use a simpler tool. Surprise and truth. I press my shoulder into him, making him lose the little equilibrium he depended on. He staggers. His lighter fumbles, falls into the puddle, and goes out like a candle chastened. There is a lighter in his pocket, and in the smallness of that gesture, he is a child who has been surprised. We take him in hand and bring him to the center of the pier, where the rain can witness. He sputters, and his words are slippery with bravado. Dante waits. He looks like someone who will let a man talk himself into revealing the shape of his sins. "You've stepped on my floor," Dante says, voice soft as cashmere, but heavy as an iron bar. "You left marks." Conti's answers are the same old things. Bluster, blame, slurs. He says names of men who backed him, names that are not safe to speak. He believes his voice will be a sword. He believes the world will be impressed by noise. Instead, we are impressed by the small, demoralizing arithmetic of his choices. We know who wrote the envelope. We know who paid for the box. The men who thought the envelope was a way to test Dante have no idea how thorough his attention is. He looks at me then, and in that look I see both appreciation and appraisal. "You did well," he says privately, and there is no poetry to it, only acknowledgement. Conti is made to kneel in the rain,
and to confess to half a dozen slights he had imagined were secret. The men who backed him are named, and a message is sent to them in no uncertain terms. You do not move against what belongs to Dante Moretti without him knowing. The cost is not always bodily. Sometimes it is a broken reputation, a shadowed ledger, a shipment lost for a season. The threats are enough to keep predators honest. When it is over, we do not celebrate. We simply close the file on this small episode as acknowledging an overdue bill. I stand in the rain, letting it wash the squid ink from my chin in an accidental echo of the night we met. The water cleanses nothing and everything. My hair clings to my skull like a wet flag. We return to the penthouse in the quiet hour before dawn. Dante lights a cigarette, and then, in a private joke that tastes of archaic manners, stubs it out in the glass ashtray.
He watches me fold my hands together, like someone who has learned to make peace with the muscles. You could have left, he says, and it is not challenge so much as curiosity. I thought I should see if I'm good at anything besides disappearing, I answer. The confession sits between us like a book. He smiles, and for the first time, the softness there is almost domestic. The penthouse is a room of low light and high decisions. The city lay at our feet like a map someone used to trace routes. I take the mustard sweater from the closet. It has an odor that no washing can quite erase, thrift store smoke and the ghost of bargains. I hold it like a relic, watching Dante watch me. The fabric looks smaller than it used to be, or perhaps I am larger. There it is, he says, the thing you used as armor. I do not say anything. Instead, I light a small flame in the fireplace, metaphor made simple, and feed the sweater to it. The wool curls, then darkens, and there is a smell that makes my eyes smart, something like burnt promises. The threads turn to ash under the small, hungry mouth of the fire. I watch, and a strange clarity arrives with the smoke. I have not just destroyed a garment, I have made a ritual of choosing. Dante holds out his hand, not to take mine, but to offer an alternative to the ledger's margin. I could have bought you, he says. I could have made sure there was money for you to vanish, a residence in some comfortable place. I would have been generous and terrible. I imagined that, I say. It is not what I wanted. He studies me with the face of a man measuring a piece before he cuts it. Then choose, he says simply. I will make you an offer in 2 parts. 1, you can take your independence, your money, your papers, a place to be, in exchange for never working here, never sitting at this table, never being in my city. 2, you can take my hand and build with me, not as an ornament, not as an appendage, as something of consequence. The terms will be hard, the expectations higher. You will be seen, you will not be invisible, you will have power and danger in equal parts. The simplicity of the options is a kind of cruelty. Both have weight, both have cost. Money would buy me a small island of privacy, but it would also mean a life familiar to the one my father tried to arrange for me. Tidy, contained, purchased. Partnership with him would mean always walking in a room that could turn hostile. It would mean moral compromises and a calendar of obligations written in other men's blood. One is safety sold, the other is autonomy braided with risk. I look at him, the man who could be called a monster, Dante Moretti, with his sandalwood and his cold hands, is asking me to choose not between his mercy or his market, but between 2 different kinds of life. The muscle in my jaw tightens. I have been trained for this, not by schools, but by need. Negotiate and survive. What do you want me to promise? I ask. The question is both practical and philosophical. Truth, he says, a mind willing to speak, a hand that is not content to be ornamental. Loyalty, yes, but loyalty built on the fact that we will both have to invest in the other's survival. And if I refuse, I ask, the stubborn part of me still clings to the idea that freedom is something you can buy back with an envelope. Then I will see you to your safe house, and I will cut the channels that allow you to be a casualty of this world, he says. I will write the checks, buy the passports, and watch you leave. I will be exacting in my trust, but I will pay for your life if you demanded it. I can be generous like that. Generosity from him always comes wrapped in an edge. It is the kind of benevolence that comes with strings strong enough to tie your hands should you not use them. That is the terror and the promise all at once. I feel the weight of being offered a choice by a man who knows how to ensnare. I am a woman who once made herself ugly to escape being traded, and now a man with teeth gives me the moment where he could be lord or partner. I have learned that to be claimed is not always to be possessed. Sometimes it is, painfully,
an opportunity to be seen in one's full, complicated self. So, I choose. With you, I say. The words feel both reckless and inevitable. On my terms? He lets out a breath that is almost a laugh and almost an answer. On your terms, he repeats, like testing the sound of it. Name one. Honesty in counsel, I say. A veto when life is at stake. No arrangements made that affect me without my knowledge. And I hesitate a fraction, and then my voice finds a small, fierce thing inside it that has been growing like a hidden muscle. I will not be purchased. If you ever treat me like merchandise, you will owe me an accounting. He smiles then, not the merciless smile of rumor, but a softer one. I do not bargain with fire, he says, but I appreciate the politics of a good contract. We make another kind of pact then, consequence for consequence, not with lawyers, but with eyes. He slides the black card across the table and writes on the back a set of numbers. Accessible funds, yes, but not the point. The point is the gesture, an acknowledgement that if I am to be in this life, there will be an infrastructure for me. I sign my name on a napkin with hands that do not shake. That night we make a different kind of map. It is private and funny in ways no one else would understand. He calls me Mia for the first time as if testing the nickname on the air. It lands like an intimate talisman. Mia, he says, with an intimacy that seems to age like good wine. The name fits the inner rhythm of our bargain, part domestic, part claim. I allow it, because it feels like reclaiming a currency my father had handed out at will. Our intimacy that night is not an explosion, but a conversation conducted in felt touches.
It is the undoing of some small parts of me and the reassembly of others. We are careful with each other, like people who have survived storms together. He moves as if remembering the shape of consent. I move as if knowing where my boundaries are. There is tenderness and there is hunger, but nothing is violent or non-consensual. We trade names and small revelations like currency. His hands speak of possession and protection in equal measure. My hands speak of choices and limits. At one point, he parts my hair and breathes in the sandalwood on me and says, "You are not merchandise, Mia." I believe him in the same breath that memories of my father's bargain rush into the edges of my vision. The next days are an education of a different sort. Being at Dante's side is like learning to read in a language that is both new and horribly familiar. I attend meetings, not as ornament, but as mind. I argue about shipments, and sometimes men look at me as if I am a new breed of animal. Russo grows quieter. Canty is moved aside like a pawn whose face no longer matters. There is no romanticizing the fact that my world now moves in shadows and ledgers both. Sometimes there are things to be done that leave a taste of iron on my tongue. But the ledger also bends in my favor. I am asked my opinion on matters that once were the exclusive domain of men with rougher hands. My knowledge of provenance keeps us from being cheated. My ability to hold my ground keeps me alive. We are not untouched by violence. There are threats, as always, ships that do not arrive, men who miscalculate and come to grief for thinking they could outmaneuver us. Sometimes I watch Dante from across a room and see the man the city scrawls awful legends about, cool, implacable, ruthless when necessary. I ask myself if I will become tenderized by this life, or if I will hold the edges of myself sharp. The answer is complicated, as all honest answers are. There is a moment I had not expected, a public test that cements my place. At a gathering of allied families, a rival capo makes a veiled insult about women who think their degree makes them better than the street. The old hunger flares, to speak and be heard. I stand, and I do not play for prettiness or charm. I speak about value, about provenance, about the long view of reputation, and how one small ledger line can sink a house. Men lean in. They listen. When I am done, there is a silence that is not mockery. Dante stands and says simply, "She speaks for us." It is not the sort of claim that belongs to marriage vows. It is colder, more dangerous. But it is also an announcement. The game will be played differently now. I am part of the strategy. I have a voice in the shaping of our world. Days pass into a kind of exhausted tenderness.
I learned to navigate the particular meteorology of being with a man like Dante, the slight tilt of his body when he is displeased, the way his patience thins like a rope in wind, the small gestures that reveal he is not merely a predator, but a man who is strangely protective of what he has chosen. My father calls less, and when he does, it is to apologize more than to demand.
He has seen the price of bargaining with men like Dante, and his gratitude is sharp with shame. But life is not only meeting rooms and tending to wounds inflicted by others. There are small domestic miracles. The way Dante leaves a cup of coffee in the same place every morning, the way he remembers the way I take my sugar, the way he sometimes presses a small paper into my hand in the evening with a note that says nothing more than, "Listen to this record." We are complicated together, business and intimacy braided like a double helix. One night, in the rare hours when the city is a distant heartbeat, Dante brings me a small object wrapped in tissue. It is not jewelry or a ledger, but a tiny, absurd thing, an old coin he had found in an estate on a run of the business. He gives it to me because he knows I will understand its provenance and the story hidden on its face. "For you," he says, "because you like the things that are quiet and honest." I put the coin in my pocket like a talisman. It warms there, and the sensation is private and oddly sacred. The skyline keeps changing its lights. Enemies adjust and then readjust again. We are never free from the fact that this life will demand choices that will not always be clean. But in the space between acts, between danger and a small claimed domesticity, I find a rhythm that suits me. I am not the woman who hid in the bathroom mirror that first night. I am someone else. I am chosen and choosing. On an evening that could be any other, Dante enters the room with the expression of a man who has measured a risk and decided it was tolerable. He sits near me and folds his hands as if arranging a set of papers. "There will be more tests," he says. "There will be those who think my attention is soft, who see you as a way to get to me. That is the price." "I know," I reply. "We will meet them." He studies my face with something like tenderness braided with steel. "Do you have regrets?" he asks suddenly, intimate in a way the world rarely is with us. I think of the mustard sweater and how it burned, the squid ink and the napkin wipe that was both the first touch and the sign of a dangerous calculus. I think of the ledger lines and my father's palms. I think of being made visible and of the fierce, dizzying sense of being chosen by a man who could have purchased my retreat and instead asked me to stand beside him. "Sometimes," I say, but only when I forget that I chose as well.
He reaches for my hand then, not to command, but to anchor. And in that simple connection, there is an acknowledgement that we are both moving through a life stitched together by decisions. He calls me Mia again, and I allow it because in that naming, there is a reclaiming of the private currency my father spent recklessly. The future remains a dangerous thing. There are other men who resent what I am now, and there are dangers we have not yet solved. But for the first time since I stood in front of that cracked mirror, I do not imagine vanishing. I imagine strategy. I imagine partnership. I imagine the kind of power that is not only force of arm, but force of mind. We end, as we often do, with a private moment that is both ceremonial and mundane. I brew coffee and we sit in the morning light, watching the city change its clothes. He reaches across and tucks the coin from his pocket into mine like a small secretive pact. "For luck," he says, but the sound of his voice says more about the faith he has in the two of us. I take the coin and press it into my palm. It is cold and small, a thing with history and weight. "For choice," I say. He smiles, and it looks almost like forgiveness. "For choice," he echoes. Outside, the world keeps moving in its terrible, beautiful patterns. Men will still plot, deals will be offered and refused. There will be nights when I will want again to smudge my face and hide in the glass of a taxi, and there will be nights when I will stand in a boardroom and argue over a ledger until it bends. I will not be what I was, sold without consent, but I will not be wholly unscathed either. That is the trade-off of living a life that is both dangerous and chosen. The mustard sweater, reduced to ash, is a piece of theater I will never wear again. The red dress still sleeps in its box sometimes, and sometimes I take it out and hold it like a memory of who I can be when I wish to speak in silk rather than in ledger lines. Dante watches me when I do, and there is a private war in his gaze between the predator the world knows and the man who wants a hand to hold steady in the dark. The city will write more chapters. Enemies remain. Conti is only one small example of the foolish and the vengeful, but the important change is not the temporary victories or the small skirmishes. It is the rearrangement of the centers in my life. I am no longer commodity. I am a willing participant in a dangerous currency, love braided with strategy, intimacy braided with danger. There is a tenderness in the way our evenings are shaped now that is not soft in the sentimental way, but sturdy, like stone shaped into an arch. It holds up. It keeps the weather out for a moment. I cannot promise I will never regret the costs.
I cannot promise the world will be kinder, but I can promise this, that when the next envelope drops, I will not be hiding behind a mustard sweater hoping to be unbought.
I will stand with knowledge and with Dante by my side, the monster who claimed me not as property, but as a partner, the man who could have paid for my vanishing and instead paid for my choosing. If you like the turn of the unexpected and want more dark, dangerous stories where women choose their fate, subscribe and stay for the next chapter. There are enemies still out there, and we are only beginning to play.